always being invited into the story. And if we're followers of Christ, that means being invited into the story, not just of God and Christ, but in the story of other people.
I think the pilgrimage is important for people of faith, and the people of faith for the Diocese of Michigan, to understand some of the deep roots of our country. That our country has a foundation that has some real cracks in it.
This was a very engaging way to do that, and a way that would also allow us to build community among ourselves. Yes, we have book studies, but actually traveling together and going on a pilgrimage is very different, because it does build this community that hopefully will be lasting. So for me, what are we meant to do to build a community of faith that can change the world around it, but also makes this intentional effort to learn about one another and to be with one another in a loving way?
Much of the affluence of this country is based upon more than 200 years of white people keeping black people in slavery, treating people made in God's image and likeness as if they are less than people who happen to be white.
So many Americans, particularly white Americans, don't want to admit to this history. Just as they don't want to admit that they might have slave owners in their background. They don't want to talk about, yeah, my granddaddy helped lynch somebody. But communities are starting to do that, and I think that's somewhat positive.
What stayed with me is when we went to the Legacy Museum and saw the ocean as we walked in. It was like, I was overwhelmed, and I said, I can't do this, you know. And then I overcame that and went in. It was something that you really had to take in. I think it would have been harder without the camaraderie of the group.
Being able to experience and be with a diverse group of people that you hear each other, and you can, instead of processing things on your own, you hear people say that they're looking for family members on lynching coffins. You can't walk away from that and not be changed. It's that kind of dialogue that reconciles us to our church and our faith, and in being able to get through this together.
You know, one of the really disturbing things in the last few years has been this effort to erase or suppress our real histories, and therefore erase and suppress the experience of many people in our country, and this is one way to counteract that.
I think you do not try to hide history. I think everybody has to understand what happened in the past. And I think back when I was a child, we experienced stuff. And I think if you don't remember your history, you make the same mistakes again.
I could read all I wanted to about racial injustice in the past, but I don't carry in my body the trauma that they carry, the trauma that has been passed down from generation to generation. And it's a perspective that, I mean, maybe I knew it in my head, but I didn't feel it in my heart, not until then.
The stories of some of the freedom riders and the Fannie Hamer and what she experienced, and the strength that she had to tell her story. And I'm just so grateful that she did, because it's so important to have that on record, and it's so important for us as a country to know that these things happened, and they were brave enough to put their lives on the line to say, we'll do what we need to do to make a change.
A bunch of us went to lunch together, and on the way back I said, people in Alabama are so friendly. I could live here. And one of the ladies that was with us, she was African American, and she turned to me and she said, friendly? Really? She said, "That's because of the color of your skin, Joan." And I thought, oh, it was very, oh, it's invisible to me, but it was not invisible to her.
What stood out to me was lynching. The lynching was horrific and in great numbers. It was so many lynchings throughout the South. I didn't know people were lynched that much. The pictures of men and women and families being hung all at once. It was unreal to me that one human could do that to another.
I'll never forget seeing a photograph of people gathered together after Sunday church for a picnic under a hanging tree, which has always moved me to tears. One, for the violence done to innocent bodies, but also for the damage done to the souls of those people who participated, and even if they didn't participate, never said anything about it.
I was overwhelmed when I saw the hanging plaques. I just couldn't believe that there could be that much hate for all of those people to be lynched.
There are these blocks of concrete that just go on and get bigger. And you think of those pictures you've seen of whites sort of like a town picnic, watching a lynching and taking off souvenirs. And you're looking up at it and say, yeah, it's like I'm here, just part of that. At 16th Avenue Baptist Church, there's a stained glass window of Jesus standing at the door and knocking, whose face has been blown off. And they said, well, there are a couple of interpretations. And one was that Christ could not bear to look at these dead children. But the other is, and the body of Christ remains.
What is the legacy of slavery? What is the legacy of Jim Crow? What is the legacy of redlining? Where do we see those legacies still at work now within our communities? And how do we understand where they came from?
I need to acknowledge the sinfulness of the past, how I may have benefited from those sins, and what I'm going to do now as a person of faith to move it forward, to make it better.
The pilgrimage didn't start from that day we left and got there and ended when we left. It should be a journey that continues, a pilgrimage of a lifetime.
I want people to let their fear go of talking to people or asking questions or learning about history, because African American history is American history. It's everybody's history. I feel like there's hope because there were so many people that wanted to learn about history, that people that didn't look like me were interested.
What should I be doing? What can I do to uphold civil rights? What can I do to improve gender equity? What can I do to become less violent in society?
We talk about the arc of history bending towards justice, but we're the ones who have to bend it. It's not going to happen by itself. And looking at our past and understanding our own gifts and possibilities, that's what's going to bring us into the future.
I view things through a different lens. I thought I had a pretty good understanding of social justice work and the work of the church and being involved in a lot of that. And it opened my eyes and heart that I needed more.
It's my hope for the folks who have gone on the pilgrimage that in coming back, that this is going to influence their passions and then how they act out God's call, how it will impact their ministries. Understanding slavery and then the legacy of lynching and Jim Crow laws, to how does that play out in the Detroit metro area? How does it play out in the Lansing area? And for us to be able to look for those links and then to say, what are we as communities of faith going to do about that?
If you're in the advantaged caste, if you will, in our country, coming to the understanding that a lot of the things you have aren't because we live in a meritocracy. It's because we live in a system that's actually meant to advantage you over someone else. And having to just sit down face to face with someone who's been disadvantaged within that system can be extremely uncomfortable. And to make amends for that, to change that, that's what reparations means to me. It's something that we're called to do just in our prophetic tradition as people of faith.